What's really good, guys? It's your boy Hatter Ali from the What's Really Good podcast with the one and only board of directors of this podcast, Coach G-Dub in the building, like always. What's going on, Coach?
Everything's going great. Hatter, how are you doing, my man?
Hey, obviously I'm doing amazing. Yeah, we had our both birthdays week last week, and we have an amazing
Yeah.
show for you guys this week. And Coach has no clue who's gonna come on, but this is a defensive show. I will tell you that it's all about defense. It's gonna be a lot of information coming your way, and we will have the special guest on soon. Coach, any guesses?
I just can't wait. I've got so many coaching friends and several of them in the Hall of Fame. So I just can't wait to see.
Hey, so here we go, Coach. Here will be the. I'm over here trying to get as much information I can because we're gonna have two alphas in the building. I don't know. One's coming from this side, one's coming from this side.
Yeah.
I gotta watch out. You know what I'm saying? So here we go. the special guest for today's show, aka Defensive Genius, aka 62 interceptions, just like that, aka two-time Super Bowl champion, and as well a Pro Football Hall of Fame inductee. Today's guest on the show, Dick LeBeau.
That's who I was hoping. I was hoping it was Coach LeBeau. That's who I was hoping it was going to be.
What do you say, GW?
Everything's going great. How are you doing, my man?
I'm still above ground. That's a start. That's good. It's good to see you, Coach.
Me and you both. In fact, I had a thing on another show that my son Blake and I do, and was talking about the other day, and I was talking about you on all the things that I learned from you and everything, and how I'd hybridize what we do on defense from, Buddy Ryan and George Allen and Dick LeBeau, and now it's stupid ass Gregg Williams.
Well, you got a pretty good core going for you, Coach, there. I know when I worked for you and we were together, we had the second best defense in the league. I do know that. And if we'd have had one more,
we sure did.
At the first.
There's no doubt about that. And we were second by just a few microcosm of a few yards. So that's just how it was. And it was great doing those days. And I still think about some of the great moments we had together.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And we had a great defensive group there, players and coaches. And that's what happens when you have a good team.
You betcha.
Coach LeBeau, how are you? How's everything? How's health? How's all this other stuff going around?
Everything's great. I got no complaints. Health is good. If I were going to complain about any one thing, I love to play golf. And when I hit my tee shots now, they don't stay in the air near as long as they used to. And so I'm going to definitely complain about that. But I still can hit them and I can find them most of the time. So I'm enjoying life, and I've been blessed, to be honest with you,
Hatter, Dick LeBeau can flat play golf. I'm telling you, he knows how to play golf. And Coach, I've been doing some of that too with a lot of these different charities, and it's amazing how when I started playing more, how much better I got. But it's still the most humbling thing that I do, because I can still hit it a long ways. And I played at a big celebrity and VIP event down to Senior PGA Open in Akron, Ohio at Firestone Country Club a week ago. And when I was playing that day for the Senior PGA, a lot of the people were saying, well, why aren't you on the tour? You're playing so well. You should be out there with the other guys. And I said, wait a minute. And I hit another shot, and they say, we see why you're not on there now.
Hey, I know you guys been doing the golf stuff, and I gotta say, I'm blessed to Coach LeBeau that me and your son Brandon met and it's blessing. It's a blessing to have you on this show with us. And Coach, you had a book released about a couple of weeks back called Legendary. give some insights, on the book and why it is a must read for all the football fanatics out there.
Well, it's a great book. It's a football book. It's a book about the 2008 Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I've always been a statistic guy. I'm a statistic freak. It came from when I first started coaching, even as a position coach, and you're working in a room with maybe 8 or 10 guys, and then you become a coordinator and you got 25 guys maybe. But I was a goal orientated guy. I wanted to set goals for my players, and in doing that, I had a big question: what was a realistic goal to establish for this group of athletes? I didn't want it to be meaningless, that if you got the goals and we still had like a 7-7 season or something of that nature, I wanted to have victory incorporated with those goals. And but at the same time, I didn't want them to be pie in the sky where you had to be the greatest team that ever played to reach. And in doing so, I thought that the only way to be realistic about that, excuse me, was to examine the numbers of the past, what are the best defenses scored in the past, what are they doing right now, and keep track of it through the future. So I ended up coming up with the top 10 teams in each category. I selected 11 categories that I thought were critical for defensive play, for their team to be successful and for the defense to do a good job to keep the offense in there, and so they don't have to score 40 points every week for us to win a game. And in doing that, I took the top 10 in each category. So it wasn't the playoff teams or something like that, because you might run into a great offense that didn't have that good of a defense. It had to be the top scorers in defense in each category. And then I took the average of that. So you are at the midpoint of the very, very best people in that particular statistic. And I did this for 35 years. Well, in doing so, I would base kick off my weekly thing on how we did the last week, where we had to get better, what went wrong, and what we had to improve to keep that number from getting worse and getting better, which is always your goal, to improve every week. And then we'd wrap that up early in the first game plan meeting, and then take off on the guys we were going to play. So the players were very cognizant of their numbers and what kind of job that I thought at least they were doing. And I noticed that this 2008 defense, we won the championship that year and won the Super Bowl in a heck of a game. Actually, our quarterback bailed us out down there for the winning touchdown. But Ben was used to doing that for us anyhow, Ben Roethlisberger, our quarterback. So we were first in all these things. And I said, I've been doing this for a long, long time because I was 70 years old then. And I said, I don't think I've ever seen numbers like this on a defense. And I said, well, I ain't got time to mess around with that right now. I got to get ready for the next game. So at the end of that year, and working in the off season when you can do all the statistic stuff and get as freaky as you want to get, and I got looking back, and no one had ever come close to what these guys had done. And I said, someone should write a book about these guys. But of course, by the time you're done with the football season and you're looking at this, then you're getting ready for the draft, and you don't have time, and you're not going to write any book, that's for sure. And little did I know that I was going to end up working until I was 80 years old. And so I never got a chance to write a book about these guys. And finally, when I retired, I said, well, let's do this book. And I got to thinking about it in my mind and formulating some thoughts. And I said, ooh, this is not going to be as easy as I thought it might be. Writing a book, I say everybody's got one good book in them. Greg, you'd have 4 or 5, I'm sure, with your life's experience. I got a couple guys that had written books, and like yourself, Greg, published books. I didn't even know how to start, so we got a hold of a publisher, and they said they would be interested, and they gave us a deadline, so we went to work. And actually, we worked. We had a three-way communication, and I would just take off and start talking. And I figured we played 19 games that year, and there'd be 19 chapters. And I was going to tell the story of the game and the team and individuals and how we all came to be in the same place at the same spot. I thought it could be a good nucleus for a good book. And that's how the book got started. It's all based around these stats on this team. And as we got into it, I thought, well, wait a minute now. That's 16 years ago. You know, it might have been 4 or 5 teams already done better. Well, looking back, no one's ever been close to what these guys did in 2008, and you don't hear about it. So this will give you a chance to see what good defense is. Actually, the numbers I would adjust the numbers every year so that they would be current. The game evolves and the game changes, and and offenses are more potent now, so the stats would go. But I would still have that basis of the average number of the top 10 in each category. So I was always going to be current in that respect. And that's why I say the way the game has evolved here of late, I doubt if anyone comes close to these numbers again. The camaraderie that they had and the specialness of a team sport and the group, it's in the book. And I think that anyone really who's a coordinator of a major business or just a family business can get some good info and input from it. But basically, it's an athletic book about an athletic group of guys who were really great. It was my privilege to get to coach them. And it tells a story of how they were successful. Each one, they had no weak spots. Each one was great. And I guess I've rattled on long enough, but you asked the question of why the book. And that's the reason for the book. Troy Polamalu was the first ballot Hall of Fame guy. A lot in there about him. James Harrison, both of those guys won the most outstanding defensive player in the league at different years. Harrison actually in 2008, which is the year the book takes place in, and Troy just a couple of years ago went in. But there's a lot of sidebars in there. At first, I didn't want anything in there except these guys in the story. But it turned out that you had to get a couple things in there about the coordinator too. And the more that I put in there, the more I said, well, this ain't too bad. I'll put a little more in there about me. So you can hear a little bit about the evolution of the league. See, I came into the National Football League in 1959, and I worked there for 59 years. Didn't quite make 60, but I kept gainfully employed for 59 consecutive years. And that's another stat that'd be hard to duplicate unless you're an owner. So there's Heather, there's a long answer to your question.
But I will tell you this, legendary Dick LeBeau, and you said so many things that brings a great singing to my heart and my respect for you. And the word legendary, okay, is synonymous with you. And those players got the great opportunity to also be able to play, okay, with Dick LeBeau as their coordinator. And to this day, they were always, and I have come across many of those guys. I stay in touch with those guys too. I track that defense. I stay on top of it because you taught me that when you came into Buffalo with me about how you did all the calculations and stuff. And I was doing some of the same things and still do some of the same things on how we go about setting goals and doing those types of things. But I will say this right now, there won't be anybody, okay, more than 59 years. There won't be anybody, okay, that challenges that particular thing. And again, back a long time ago, back in 2000 or 2001, that 85 Bears team out of 1985, I finished 0.6 yards, greater than them. So they beat me by 0.6 yards, the 85 Bears, on what we did in 2001, I think it was. But at 2010, 2008, there won't be anybody that'll be able to challenge that with the way the game has evolved. That's Gregg Williams' opinion.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate the compliments there. You've been a very, very successful coach your whole career. And I thought together that we mixed really well. And it didn't surprise me that we ended up with a pretty daggone good defense together.
Pretty good.
That's why I'm scared of being this podcast right now. You got the two alphas on one side, and I might just get two stiff arms my way.
Well, I'll tell you what, Greg was my boss, and he was a good man to work.
Yeah, it could happen, and I will tell you this:
he was a great head coach.
Well, I appreciate that, and I wanted to, and I appreciate that, when I did that at Cleveland too, and could have stayed there. But again, as a head coach, there's certain things that a head coach has to have. And I enjoyed the time there and enjoyed every aspect of that. But I will tell you this is, to this day, even now when I'm helping Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson with the UFL, and it's very, very much necessary to help the NFL, because you and I both have signed a lot of guys out of NFL Europe, World League, all the different types of stuff, giving in their second chances. I still, and I want you to smile when you hear this, I still teach the zone coverages with landmark drops, and then, relate to the spot, and there's certain spots we never get outside of unless we're making a play on the ball, because Dick LeBeau made that very evident to me and taught me that skill set on how to play zone coverage.
Well, some things, it's always going to be 11 guys against 11 guys. And some things that we learned the hard way, Craig, is not going to change. And that's going to be, still one man against another man. They got to do it that way. I know that I must say this about you. I lived for our Saturday night meetings with the team. I thought you did as fine a job as a head coach as anybody. I go, well, I wonder what coach is going to do this week. And I enjoyed those. I was kind of wishing that we played more than 16 games, to be honest with you. And they do now, 17.
And we got to get that book. And the other thing too, Coach, that I want to bring a smile to your face. When I took over at Cleveland, and my father-in-law was the late legendary Mike Shannon of the St. Louis Cardinals for 60 straight years, 10 as a Hall of Fame player, 50 as a Hall of Fame broadcaster. So he came up to every game when I was the head coach. And as you know, in the night before the games and all that kind of stuff, is that, I'm pretty much a focused kind of a person when I'm up speaking in front of everybody. And I hear this giggling going on in the back of the room, and I'm trying to figure out who's not paying attention, who's giggling in the back of the room. And the players are all smiling, and they're looking at me like, uh-oh, here comes Coach Williams on check whoop ass, uh-oh. And I look in the back of the room, and I want you to hear this. In the back of the room is Mike Shannon and Jim Brown telling stories of the 50s and the 60s of when they were professional football and baseball players. And I decided then, I'm looking at them and they look at me and they're smiling like they didn't give a shit what I was saying. And I look at them and I went, thumbs up, just keep on going. And the players went bonkers because I didn't jump all over them on them telling the stories about diversification and, all the different things that they had to do back in professional sports and Major League Baseball and the National Football League in the 50s and the 60s. And it's still one of my greatest memories in life.
That's a good story.
Everyone out there, you guys better get the book. It's on Amazon. You can go on Barnes and Noble. I actually ordered myself a hard copy, and the mailman's taking a little too long. I might need to stiff arm him too to hurry the hell up, and because I gotta get to reading on that. So everyone out there, you must get that book.
I'm gonna go get it today.
There we go.
You'll enjoy it, Greg.
There's no doubt about it. I won't be able to put it down. I promise you that.
It's easy reading. You'll read it quickly.
And Coach LeBeau, people can't forget about this. obviously we got to go back to memory lane. You were a top cornerback till this day in NFL history. How was playing cornerback for the Lions during that time, and being with the Lions? How was the love that the Detroit showed you?
Well, it was a good time to be in Detroit. I came into the league in 1959, and it was a time of Motown, baby. And Detroit was king, really, in the automotive industry. There weren't any competition with foreign producers to speak of. Every car in the world was manufactured in the United States of America, and the bulk of them came out of Detroit, Michigan. Everybody had money. I sold swimming pools one summer, and Michigan, Detroit, was the third leading in-ground swimming pool producer in the country, behind California and Florida at that time. Because everybody had money, they could only swim in it for a month and a half a year, but they wanted them. And it was a wonderful time to be in that city. Things were different there. We all, after a ball game, there was a restaurant, an Italian restaurant in town that shut off the downstairs of their facility. And it was only open to the Lions and their guests after the games. And we'd all go there. And about half of Motown's recording artists they'd be our guests. They'd be down there, and we'd sit down there and eat after a game and sing songs with them all into the wee hours of the morning. And, the Supremes, Jackie Wilson, they were all down there. So it was a super time. And if you're looking at the history, anything that's where it is today, history's a big part of it. And our music, Motown, was a huge part of our music today. And all those people that were a part of that, they're writing books about them now. There's no Motown in this football book, except Lynn Barney and Mel Farr. They sung backup for Jackie Wilson on a couple of them. But that was a good time. It was a great town. And we had really good football teams. We always came in second to Green Bay every year. They had a guy named Lombardi over there.
What you did, 62 interceptions. That's unheard of till this
Amazing.
day. And not a lot of people can reach that number at all. And obviously, Coach LeBeau, from 2004 to 2014, you took the Steelers to 9 playoff appearances, 3 times to the Super Bowl, winning 2 of them. Your defense was always special, but the 2008 Steelers defense was something else. What was the key to your success for your defense?
Well, going back to the interceptions, Hatter, there's I think it's maybe 10th in the league now, all time, which is still pretty good. My last year playing was 1972. Yeah. And Lombardi's theory, they were the number 1 team in the league in those days. They would run the ball 65% of the time, and they throw it 35% of the time. Well, that's totally flipped now, to where they're throwing it 65 to 70% of the time and only running it 30% of the time. And I got those, my 62, when they hardly ever threw the ball. You had to be able to play run defense too when I played, if you're playing in the secondary. But those numbers, I would use those a lot as a coach, and I'd be talking to my guys, and if I wanted to establish a little credibility, I'd go around the room and I'd say, how many interceptions you got? How many you got? How many you got? And I'd total them up. I said, oh, you guys got 40 interceptions between you. You only got to go 22 more and you'll catch me. So I used that stat. In fact, there's, I think Night Train with 81, it might be a Krause of Minnesota might be 81 is still the highest of all time, and probably won't be beaten even though they throw the ball all around. We weren't. I played 14 years. That's an exceptional amount of years. The guys don't play that long anymore. Their billfold slows them down, and they can't keep playing. But I was a member of great defensive teams. We had a great front seven, and the quarterback didn't have too much time to mess around, and so I benefited from a lot of balls that were hurriedly dispatched to get out of the quarterback's hands, and I would pick them off. My hands were pretty good. What was your question, Heather? I'm sorry now. I got rattling about I wanted to get back to how many picks I got when they never ever threw the ball. I'd probably have about 100 now if I was playing now.
Lots of people. I've told a lot of people that in nowadays game, you would have had over 100. Okay, because I love going back and watching those anticipatory breaks and all that kind of stuff, and how you knew where the ball was going before even the receiver knew where the ball was going at times. And there's no doubt in my mind you would have had over 100 in this day and age.
Well, I don't know about that, but I studied film. It was in my era, people didn't watch film that much, and I wouldn't go home after practice. I'd go back over to the office, and we were film projectors in those days, and I'd get back in the film room and I'd look at every game of our opponent. So I was kind of training for being a coach in those days, and I did that. I don't know how many interceptions I would get, but I think I could still play for a while. I would try for sure.
Yep, I do too.
No, Coach. I mean, good thing that you explained the interceptions and how back in the days everyone was much throwing, but you still got them. So it's good that you showed all the viewers and the young cats out there some history, because some of these people shy away from history. But the question was, obviously your defense was so special throughout those 10 years with the Steelers. Now, what was the key to your success for your defense?
Well, there were two things. The number one thing was I was a beneficiary of an amazing group of athletes, and I was there for a good while, so there was more than one series of athletes. There were two different, you might say, waves of athletes, but they were all tremendously gifted, and I benefited, I think, from the 70s Steeler defenses, the Great Steel Curtain. And it became pretty much part of the legacy of the Pittsburgh Steelers that they were going to play you damn good defense whenever they stepped out there. And I used that starting every season. I would show them a little bit of the 70s guys. Their particular, they won 4 championships in that decade. And it wasn't so much a question of were you going to score against them. In a lot of games, it was were you going to get a first down against them. I mean, teams just couldn't handle them at all. And
you bet.
I used that to get our guys focused starting out. And then, of course, we created our own identity from there. But that's the number one thing. I had great players that were very smart players. And you could do a lot of things with them because they would spend the time to learn what you were trying to get them to do. And they took great pride in their performance. So I benefited from that tremendously. And the other thing that I think that I benefited from was pressure on the quarterback, pressure on the ball. And that was philosophically something that I think everything will change. They'll make it easier to block us. They'll make it easier. You can't hit the receiver. They'll make it easier for it to do this, easier for do that. They'll change the shape of the ball so they can throw it easier. I mean, it'll all be that way. But if you get pressure on the football, you're going to create problems for the offense. You're going to get turnovers. You're going to get mistakes from the offense. And that philosophy is never going to change. In my situation, I studied, like, I've already talked about my data and getting a stat freak. I studied every play that I called and every defense that I called and what its result was at the end of every year. And then I had a file of 10 years of what certain defenses had done. And I would equate that to how many turnovers did they create? How many yards did they give up? What was the overall average for that call? And I found that the blitzes by far and above were the most dramatic play to favor the defense. And it was also the most egregious losses for the defense. They would gash the defense when you were blitzing and make big plays. So I said, well, let's hold on to the pressure and see if we can't get a safer way of protecting the big play, even though we're going to still get pressure on the quarterback by overloading the protection of the offense. And at least keep one guy back there in the secondary that has vision to see what's going on. Maybe your corner fell down. In the past, if you were blitzing, when he fell down, it was just 6 points. But in the zone blitz concept, you got a guy or two who can still watch and patrol and get over there and make that a 17-yard play, a 14-yard play, instead of a 57-yard touchdown. So I benefited from that line of thinking. We always kept people where you could see, but we also would disguise, load one side and blitz the other. And we were the first guys to start moving a lot of people around. And my thinking on that was solely this. The offense has the advantage of being in the huddle or getting on the ball with verbal communication and getting into whatever formation they want to get in, using whatever motion they want to get into, snap the ball whenever they want to. They know where the ball's going. They know what the play is. They know who's getting it and where it's going and when. The defense has always got to interpret that. What I wanted to do was give them things that they had to interpret, and they didn't know for sure where we were. We looked like we might be threatening over here, but we might just as well come from over here. And I just tried to balance the playing field a little bit between the offense and the defense on pre-snap identification. And they didn't have to identify that much because they could talk in the huddle and then call a play, and they knew the snap count. We had to learn all that. So those are two things that we benefited from. We used disguise, we used motion. We would hold you by the nose and run around kicking the ass. It basically is what we would do. And the other thing was I got a group of athletes that probably would have done the same thing without the zone blitz. But the zone blitz was a huge part of it. Nobody had seen it. And it's still very, very common. Greg will tell you this. It's very common in the league, and they've seen it a lot, but it's still a problem for them to deal with.
It sure is. And, again, it brings a great smile to my face to hear you talk about that, because you convinced me to start doing a bunch of that stuff. And then the pre-snap disguise over the post-snap disguise that I got from you is now, so I'll let you know, I have now, the word that I use on a pre-snap disguise is the word bogey, B-O-G-E-Y. And a bogey is an 11-man disguise on what we're going to play post-snap. But pre-snap, you're not going to know. And I've now got 46 bogeys that go in the defense, meaning that a particular bogey only goes with this type of a play or this type of a play, because not only are we trying to affect the offense, but we are not, and I learned from you, we are not going to put our own defensive players out of position, so that now when they play the post-snap position, they're going to be close enough to be able to do those type of drops and all that kind of stuff, so that you can confuse the offense. But that's Dick LeBeau, and it brings a very big smile to my face to hear you talking about that on how you introduce Fire Zone to everybody else in the National Football League.
I still watch your teams play, Greg, and I see what you're doing, and you're a pressure guy, and you're right in my building with that. I love your defenses, and I love the way you attack, and I enjoyed my time with you. I do watch your teams play, and I know you have been very successful wherever you've gone with what you're doing, and it takes a lot of man hours from you. There's no video that's going to tell you what bogey you want with what. You got to sit down and work and figure that out. And that's
Yep.
the thing that we did have an advantage on because no one else was doing, and they'd never seen it. And we would shred some offenses sometimes. They got an idea what to do, but you can still counter that with the left hand of what you're talking about.
No doubt.
I still watch your teams, Coach. I watch.
Coach LeBeau, you're the inventor, the innovator of the Zone Blitz. Now, nowadays, Coach, this is a great question. Coach G-Dub, this is a question for you too. At this day of age, with the offenses on the rise, right? Let's say Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. How would you have schemed against the Chiefs offense in this day of time?
The biggest thing, and I know Coach LeBeau is going to talk about this, is that you can't give up the deep ball. You got to make it come out of his hand and fast in a hurry. Whenever he holds the ball long enough or improvises in and out of the pocket, he can take the deep shots on you. But there's a reason why Gregg Williams' defenses for the last couple of decades, or maybe the last 15 years, when the RPO scheme came into the National Football League while we're number one, against that all the time. And you have to understand what the offensive scheme is on how their run pass option or PRO, pass run option, on what they go about doing and those type of things. And then make them go back to the old days, make them go back to max protections, make them go back to not get a chance to have 4 and 5 out on different routes and stuff. And we still do those same things. And we're not afraid to continue to probe you with the pressures, but we don't want the quarterback to hold the ball long enough that he can take shots down the field, whether we're in coverage or not, but make it come out of his hands in a hurry. And I love the fact, that Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, all the people that Coach LeBeau and I played against, we averaged the quickest time to release that those quarterbacks had when they play against us, because they know what they're going to have to, how the quarterback's going to have to block people that the offensive linemen can't block because that's not in their protection.
Agree. I watch football still. Football coaches is not going to, just because you retire doesn't mean you're not going to watch the game. I don't study the game. I don't get video and click it like I used to. I watch a lot of games, and the game, I've had a tremendous history with the game. I've seen or played against or watched almost every outstanding quarterback there ever was. And the one thing that has been constant, and the reason that I felt the way that I felt and still do and always will, they don't act and react and play as well when they're under duress as when they're back there holding the ball and waiting on somebody to come out in a particular pattern that never had to be adjusted at any way, shape, or form. And you can go back to the run and shoot offense. I mean,
yes,
there's vestiges of it all over. The West Coast passing offense, which dominates. That it's going to happen as long as they play football. Offense is going to come up with something. The defense is going to figure out a way to stop it, and then the offense is going to figure out some way to get after that. And there's going to be adjustments and variations of certain forms of attack and defense. But something that's not going to change is if you're the guy that's in charge of delivering that football to somebody else, if you don't have much time to get rid of that damn thing, you're not going to play as well as if you're comfortably back there, never got hit, never got knocked on the ground, and didn't have to send your uniform out to the dry cleaner after the game. That quarterback's going to be pretty successful. So I would definitely work, and I watched a lot of Kansas City stuff, and the last couple of years, early on in the year, they didn't get off to the quickest starts in the world. And
Agreed.
I mean, you can affect anybody, but I would say this: I'd rather be watching Mahomes play than having to defend him.
I agree. Yeah.
Coach G-Dub and LeBeau, how would you explain to an offensive football fanatic that defense still indeed wins championships?
Go ahead, Greg.
It's always going to come down in all these games right now. And statistically and everything, the vast majority of every NFL game is going to come down to one score or less. And, you got to understand that. And when it gets outside of that one score, okay, it's because defensively you're not very good at all. But it's going to come down to there, and you're going to have to be able to execute in all fashions of the game, both field position and the special teams, and then can you get off the field on third down, in defense and affect field position that way. And then you got to get first downs and put points on the board. But when you continue to play great defense, really good defense, you're always going to be in a position to win the game at the end of the game. And if you don't play good defense, you're not going to be in those positions. And I just shake my head on, especially a lot in college football right now, on people that allow teams to have 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 possessions in a game. No. When you play great defense, you're going to have to play in 9 or 10 possessions of the game. And we're going to keep the game close enough to where we're always going to be in a position to win at the end. And that's what great defenses do.
I agree 100%, Coach. Expanding on that a little bit from what evolved into being my philosophy, because I was in the league so long, things are going to change. 1 year is not going to be the same as the next year, and it's going to go through variations and evolutions. And the game is going to evolve, and the rules are going to change.
And the rules, yes.
The rules are going to change. And people sometimes ask me, "Oh man, how would you do? What are they doing with the defense? I mean, how do you teach this? How do you teach that?" I didn't worry about that. I never worried about that. I just I did the best I could do to really fully understand, to the limits of my experience, how are they going to call a game? What are the rules of the game? Because every team that you play and every team in the league, even the ones you don't play, if you're going to win it all, eventually you're going to have to beat them or the team that beat them. You're going to play the best teams in the league. But everybody is going to play with the same set of rules. And
everybody the same set.
It doesn't matter to me what the hell the rules are. Tell me what they are. I want to study what they are, and then I want to see what is the best style that I can teach my guys to put them in the best position for this group of rules that we can have. I mean, it's all numbers. I know I'm a numbers guy, but I want to, if I can help our guys positionally, philosophically, condition-wise, to be in a little bit better situation than the guy that we're playing against, in the long run, we're going to win a heck of a lot more than we lose. And when it comes down to those playoff games, comes down to those games for the conference championship, comes down to the game for your division championship, you're going to get good play because they're conditioned to do that. And you are mathematically set to stop whatever the offense is running. Now you got to put a lot of time in as a coach to take a good look at that. And if you're a good experienced coach, you'll know what you're looking at. But you then have to apply what the rules are going to let you do to slow them down. And like Coach Williams is saying, it's going to come down in NFL games. They're coming down, or professional football games. They're coming down to 1 or 2 plays in the end of the fourth quarter. And the team that executes the best is going to win it. So I didn't worry about the rules. I don't care. I mean, so what? So they're winning 40-38. We're still winning. And you won by those 2 points because it's somewhere along the line you did something a little bit better than the other guy did. And that's my answer to that. Defense, maybe you do have one hand tied behind you every now and then. I'd be the first to admit to that. But everybody else is playing with the same rule, and you want to be better than the other guy's defense. You give your team the best chance to win when you outplay their defense, and that means you got to outplay their offense.
Agreed. Totally agreed. 100%.
And, coaches, I mean, as a defensive gurus, defensive legend coaches, these rule changes are kind of getting a little out of hand. Like no hip tackles anymore. I mean, Coach
we never heard of a hip tackle, let's put it that way. I think they invented that term. Look at Greg.
I do too.
But
like,
I
Coach,
do too. But if that's the rule, you got to figure out a way to stay within the rules, or you're going to get penalized out of every day game you get in, and you lose enough games with penalties anyhow.
But Coach LeBeau, but it's like obviously G-Dub. I'm sure you remember that game with Kevin Dyson and Coach G-Dub could have had 2 Super Bowls, and with that hip tackle that he made, now would be a penalty. So it's like things like no hip tackle and all that. Like I'm trying to figure out how by obviously you're studying the rules and all that definitely will help. But nowadays it's just kind of minus a defensive play. So it's like, how do you go around that and be successful in defense in today's NFL?
You got to stay on top of it. And Coach is exactly right. Is that whatever the rules are, we don't question those. And again, I learned that from him. We don't question the rules. We go out and play within those type of rules. And we teach our guys to play smarter, faster, tougher for longer than anybody else. And you got to play smart, you got to play fast, you got to play tough. And what Coach just talked about from a conditioning aspect is that you're still wanting to play even when the game is over because you're in better shape than they are. But play within the rules because you're never going to be selfish and sacrifice field position and sacrifice your team because you're a selfish player and can't play within the rules. You got to do that because it's best for the team.
I knew there's a reason that you and I got along well, Greg. We think the same way, man.
Same way.
Obviously, Coach G-Dub has a lot of hard hitters in his list. Obviously, one guy behind me, Sean Taylor, may God bless his soul. Coach LeBeau, who was one of the hardest hitters that you coached in your career?
I would have to say James Harrison. He was... he got released from 5 teams.
Yep.
And I'm proud to say that I was never a coach on any one of those 5 teams because the first time I saw him on a practice field in just a everyday regular practice routine drill, nobody could block him. And they said, well, he's too short. But he was a block of muscle. And he used that height disadvantage to give him leverage. And once he got you slightly off balance, it was over, man. He was around you and on the quarterback. And, I always like when I was scouting, when I began coaching, we were the scouts. I liked guys that had wrestling in their background. Because up in that front line, man, that's all you are. You're wrestling and you're using leverage and you're using body position and strength. And some guys have got more of it than others, and they're going to be harder to block. And I said, I think this guy is going to be pretty hard to block. Well, along with it, he had pretty good speed for a man of his strength and size, so that when he impacted with you, it was kind of like hitting a refrigerator on wheels. Let's put it that way. But I coached so many guys. When I was playing, linebackers weren't quite as big as they are now. But one of the great hitters that I saw was Dick Butkus from Chicago. And he was a big man and he could run. But my teammate Joe Schmidt, who played for Pittsburgh and was a leader of the Detroit Lions defense back in the 50s when they won them. Cleveland and them alternated every other year winning the world championship. Joe was probably 140 pounds soaking wet, but he was built like a wedge. His shoulders were this wide and his waist was about a 32-inch. And he, again, the guys that have a lot of impact or have some speed with them, carry speed with them, and they become timing's a factor too, I think, Coach Williams.
James Harrison, what a player. I mean, he's a player that didn't show much emotion, but when he went to the Bengals, right, and he was on that when the Bengals were playing Steelers that Sunday night, and Gruden asked him, I don't know if you guys remember Coach LeBeau. I don't know if you remember that clip, but Gruden was asking James Harrison, hey, how is Mike Tomlin? He's a great guy, young guy, kind of connects with the players coach. And then they asked about Cowell. And then when he asked about you, Dick LeBeau, he got emotional. He got teary-eyed. And that just tells you and tells all the people out there what a great, amazing, touching type of coach you are, Coach LeBeau.
And I remember the clip too when I saw it.
I've only seen it once. I wouldn't watch it, but I was just lucky enough to catch James after he'd been released all those times. And whatever the coaches were saying he couldn't do, I said, well, let's find a way to do it a different way then, because I think this guy's pretty good. James ended up being a coach on the field. And I think James would probably be the first guy to tell you that he changed a few things that he was doing earlier in his life that didn't get him in the best graces with those teams that let him go. And I'm not saying that he broke any of the rules or anything. I think he just figured out that he'd try a different way. At least wise, that's what he said to me. But in Harrison's situation, once he got to play, we weren't sure what he had, and I argued for him in the personnel meetings, Greg. I'd say, well, this guy's pretty good. We should really be careful before we let him go, like these other people have done. And then James helped me by playing in preseason, real good on special teams, which is a way that you can help yourself to make a team. And he really would have made the team whether I had been there or not, I think, that year, because he was such outstanding in preseason in special teams. But as we went on to his great career, and players can get free agency now, and he got to that position and he left. He went to Cincinnati, and he was only over there 1 year, and he was an outside backer, Greg, and they stacked him inside.
Yeah.
And,
I know.
Hands upon. So he didn't move his family. He was from Wexford. His living quarters were in Wexford, Pennsylvania, which is where I lived. And I saw him on the street in the summer, and I said, James, I said, man, I miss you. I said, we don't have the pressure without you that you can give us. I said, come on back. He said, yeah. He said, I want to come back, Coach. He said, come and get me. He said, I think you can. I said, well, I'll see what I can do. And he said, I'll tell you why I think you can get me. He said, I don't even know if they like me over there in Cincinnati. He said, my teammates and even, I don't know if they like me. He said, I'm just not sure. They act like they're about half afraid of me. I said, James, well, if you remember, we played Cincinnati twice a year for 5 years, and you knocked about a half of them out of the game. I said, they are afraid of you, man. I said, come on back. And I was never so glad to get a player back in my life as to get James Harrison back.
You bet.
What a story, Coach LeBeau. What a story. Everyone out there, this is a defensive history lesson podcast show right here. And, and who would have thought to have this collaboration? Coach G-Dub, Coach LeBeau. What amazing show. Coach LeBeau, I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Greg. I root for you. I watch you every year. So good to get to see, even if it is across these TV lines here. I wish you a lot of luck, Coach. You're a great coach and a good man.
Thank you very much, Coach. It brings a great sing to my heart and everything that I saw you pop up on the screen. We'll be family for life. We'll always be family for life. I will never change my cell phone because that was a cell phone number that you have on me that my kids gave me for Father's Day. It was my first cell phone. I still have yours. So anytime, you come up with something that's better for me to go check whoop ass on, give me a call.
I see your blitzes. You're doing all right.
Everyone out there, go ahead, get that book, Legendary, by the one and only Hall of Fame Coach Dick LeBeau. And don't forget to subscribe. Coach G-Dub, you want to exit out? I'm sure Coach LeBeau knows this, being in the Bills meetings too.
He probably been in the Bills meeting, and every time, I've broken every meeting, I go ready, break, and then everybody in the room's got to yell, come get some. So here we go. Ready, break. Come get some.